Okay, this is going to be a very quick demonstration to show you how you can do a sort of rapid spatial assessment for a landscape without having to enter too much data initially. So what I'm going to do is just create a demonstration file to start with. So we're going to create a new project. I'm just going to overwrite one that I've already done before. So we'll overwrite that. Then there's a couple of things we need to set up before we do anything. So we're going to go into the settings and options. One thing to make sure that you set at the beginning is whether you're using average case, worst case or best case data. So when you're not entering much data, this is what it will use when it's got that missing data. So we're going to leave it as average case. And then we want to know what indicators we're going to use. So I'm going to select bats, I'm going to do brown hares, and I'm going to do hoverflies. Then the other thing I'm going to do, just for practicality, is going to create a few groups for us to be able to group our features. So I'm going to create the first one here. We'll call that arable. Then we'll create another one. That will be grass. Another one. Oops, moved down the wrong one. We can drag it up there. Then we'll create woodland. And then another group for hedges. The other thing you can do is change that average worst best case setting here as well. So if you haven't set it up correctly from the outset, you can do it here. Okay, that's just got things set up. Now we're going to go and create a map. So we go to the map editor. We need a map name, so we just call it map 1. Okay, we've got a blank map now. We are going to zoom into the area where we want to create our map, so we can just do a find here. I'm just going to use partial postcode. That takes us right by where the University of Hertfordshire is, and I'm going to draw a map on this area here. First thing we need to do is create a layer. So you do this using this button here. So we've got layer 1. Now I'm going to actually create layer new, I'm going to call it. So there we go, we've created our map. We might want to save it. So what do we do now? Okay, well, let's start adding some features. Now before we do that, there's several ways in which you can sort of link up the data in the land and feature manager and data in your map layer. You could either get the system to prompt you each time you create a new polygon on the map, and then it will ask you what data you want that matched up with, or you can get it to automatically add the data in. Now we haven't created any data in the land and feature manager yet, so we might just automatically add in, and you do that from the options here. So it's already selected automatically add new features using selected feature in group. So I'll show you how that works. So we've got our woodland here. We go into edit mode on the map using this button here. We're going to add a polygon in this instance. We can then select up here the group we want to add it to. It's going to be woodland in this instance, so let's add it to the woodland group. Then we need to select what feature we're adding, so we've got woodland down here. You can see the icon. Then it's simply a case of drawing the polygon on the map. I'm doing it fairly quickly. There we are. You can tidy up polygon shapes later on using the edit tool, but I'm not going to show you that now. So we've created the polygon, now we need to save it. Fine, we've created our woodland. Let's call it woodland 1. We can edit that name if we want, but what we'll find is if we select the identify the shape, click on the woodland, we've got our woodland 1 there. If we come to the feature data, now we haven't entered any of this data, but what we'll find if we come to the impact icons is that it's already calculated the habitat suitability for bats and hoverflies in this case for different life cycle stages, for forage, for hibernation and maternity roosting for bats, and also for overwintering for hoverflies. And that's using an average case. If we use worst case, it would probably be all 0, assuming it's a worst woodland. If you actually enter data, then it will start to refine the calculation based on what you selected. And if you enter all the data, it will work out an exact score for you. But we're doing a rapid assessment in this instance, so we won't do that just now. So we've created one feature. We now want to create some more features. So we've got maybe another feature here, which is a big arable field. So let's create that. So again, we're going to add another polygon. In this case, we don't want it in woodland, we want it in arable land. And then we need to select what we're adding. So it's not agroforestry, it's arable land. There we go. So you select that icon there. And then again, same process. So we can draw the field like we did before. There we go. As I said, that can be tidied up later, but I'm going to save that there. That's now been saved. And again, if we click identify, again we've got the data there, and we can see in this case other impacts have been calculated. In this case for hares, also a range of impact indicators for hoverflies as well, but not bats. It doesn't apply to bats in this case. Okay, so we've done 2 features. We can do a few more now maybe. Now we're going to perhaps create a hedge. So we've got a few hedges here, so in which case we'll then go in, and in this case what I'm going to do, I'm not going to do a polygon, I'm going to show you a slightly simpler approach. You can draw a hedge with a polygon, especially if it's quite wide, but sometimes you can just do it with a linear feature. So we're going to do that as an example here. In this case we want to add it to our hedges group. And then we select the hedges icon. Then it's case simply just drawing a line. So I'm going to draw a single line here. I'm not going to worry about the little bit to the woodland. I'm going to treat that as a separate hedge. So I've drawn a line. Then we go to save our edits here. Then it wants to know the width of that line. So if you know the width roughly, you can zoom in and measure it if you like, but I think that's about 4 meters wide, that hedge. There we go, and it's actually created a polygon from the line that you've added on. Then similarly, we might want to draw in another hedge here. In this case, we'll add a line again. We can see that hedge is actually already selected, so you don't need to select it again, and we're just going to draw in this hedge from there to there. And again, we'll save it. I think that's a bit wider. I think that's about maybe 8 meters wide in this instance. And again, it's added it on there as a straight line polygon, so it's quite simple. So we've added woodland, we've added an arable land, we've added some hedge. We haven't added any grassland yet, so let's there's a little patch of grassland down here. What we could do before we do that is maybe explore what some of the spatial metrics we can do. So if you click on the metrics panel here, you've got a range of different metrics. And then we can come on to the spatial ones. So if we come on to, say, well, bats is selected, it's say first thing you need to do is add the metrics to the map. Now the map is a separate file to the data file, so it needs to have the various fields added for it to be able to store the data. So it says click here to add the metrics to the map. When it does that, it then can say, well, have you got everything that it needs for bats there? And actually we have, simply by adding on those features. If we then come to something like the brown hare, we'll repeat the process. In this instance, it's gone actually, no, we're actually missing some essential habitats for young hares in this instance, so that's missing. So we can't actually do a spatial habitat suitability calculation for brown hares. There's no point, it's missing fundamental habitats. Similarly, for hoverflies, we can do the same process. In this case, we've got quite a lot, but we're missing some for adult forage in July and August for both nectar and pollen. So again, we're missing some fundamental habitats there. So we'll come back to that in a moment. So we're going to add on another habitat. Let's add on the grassland, as I said I was going to do. So in this case, we'll go again, edit the map, on our polygon in this instance. We're going to add it to our grass in this case, and then we want to add grassland, so we select the grassland icon. This looks like a fairly simple shape in this instance. Nice square, roughly. We'll do that, that's fine for now. Then we'll save that. So that's fine. So now let's have a look and see what this grassland does. So in this case, actually, we've now got some habitat for young hares. So if we close that and now come back to our spatial metric, what we should find is actually if we come to our brown hare spatial HSI, it's now saying, now look, you've got all the essential habitats. We can now do the calculation for spatial HSI. If we then do that, it'll crunch away for a bit. There we go. And now what we should find is actually if we come to select one of our metrics again, we've now got the actual spatial HSI score there added in. Now once that's been added in, you then can of course plot that on the map. So what we'll do is we come to our colours section here and come to categorization. Now this uses the data that you've added to the map to essentially apply different colours based on the value that's been calculated. So as we've just done the brown hare spatial HSI, let's do that. We'll set it to auto scale. You can choose the colours. There's just a few options at the moment. We'll go from red to green, which is bad to good, and you can select the number of categories. We'll keep it at 10, and then you say categorize. So what we can now see on the map is we can see a couple of green areas and some red areas, and that simply is how suitable that is for hares. Now it's because these arable and grassland are the most suitable habitat. In this case, woodland and hedges don't necessarily serve such a good purpose, or in this case they may just not be based on the average calculation not suitable. We may have to go in and put some data in, but that's an average case scenario. We can do the same with sort of bats as well. So if we come in and look at our bats, we've got those all there, so we can click on the calculate, and then we can come down here and say we'll change the categorization and we'll use the bat in this case, and then redo it. And it's a flip side in this case, so it's actually woodland, hedges, and other features that are more important for bats in this instance. So we can start to see how it works. Now I've only done a few features here, but the idea is the more features you add in and the more data you put in, you'll start to see differentiation in the colours, as they're pretty much the same based on average data. They're all coming out roughly the same sort of score. That's just given you an idea of how you can do a very quick assessment without starting to put too much data on. That can come later if you want. So you can just rapidly, as I said, just by selecting objects here. So if you wanted to put in another arable block of land, you can do. So we can say, let's say arable land there. So we'll put this block in here. There we go. In some respects, almost think of it as like using a sort of painting application where you sort of come down here, select what you're going to do, pick what colour you want to do, in this case it's features, and then draw them on the map, and then it will do the calculations in the background. That's the sort of principle behind it. So I'm going to stop demonstration there because it's supposed to be a rapid demonstration. So we'll leave it there. I'll just cancel that there, so that's not saved. And thank you for your time.